Hello, and welcome to part 11 of Addiction 101 for Family Members. I'm Tom Harrison, author of The Complete Family Guide to Addiction. We've been talking about treatment, how to get addicts into treatment, and what treatment involves. Let's talk a little bit today about early recovery, the first process of recovery. I think the most important thing to remember about early recovery is that there is no cure for addiction. There's no magic bullet that makes it go away. All we do with treatment is we give addicts strategies and tools to not use long enough that the brain can heal itself, that the brain can gradually go back to something like normal. Now, this is a long process. Okay, addiction doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't resolve overnight. Typically, it takes about 3 months before the nucleus accumbens goes back to functioning something like normal, and it can take a year or more before the prefrontal cortex is really operating something like normal. And this is a difficult time. For the first 3 months, addicts typically are very fragile. Their brain is still telling them, you need to use, you need to use, you need to use. And they have to resist that, and they have to relearn how to do everything, because for a long time, the addiction taught them that there's one solution to all of life's problems, the substance, and they have to relearn how to deal with every aspect of life without that crutch. One addict described it as being like you're right-handed, but you have to learn how to do everything with your left hand. It's very difficult. And even after the first 3 months, for the first year, many addicts experience what's called post-acute withdrawal syndrome, PAWS, or PAWS. And addicts during this time are very often restless, irritable, anxious, depressed, preoccupied. They're not fully all there emotionally for other people because of the way their brain is healing. So the reality is that it probably takes 3 months for most addicts before they're able to kind of spontaneously respond to another person and really hear what the other person's experiencing, because and not just be preoccupied with themselves. And it's probably a year before that happens on anything like a regular basis. That's really hard and difficult, but it's the reality of the brain disorder. Now, this is very difficult for family members. It's one of the hardest things, and it's one of the least talked about things, because family members have been through hell. Remember, it's a family disease. Family members are suffering too. They need their own recovery. And when they finally get the addict into treatment, they have a tendency to think, whew, it's over. We can relax. We're going to have our addict back. He or she is going to come back into the family and have all the family responsibilities they had and do all the things they used to do. And on top of that, we need for them to make it up to us. We need them to understand what we went through and all the suffering we experienced, and we need them to be sorry, and we need them to understand. Those are the demands that family members typically and understandably tend to place on addicts in early recovery. And the unfortunate reality is that addicts just are not able to respond to that because of the way their brain is healing. And so this is a very difficult time, and it's really hard but really important for family members to understand that they're not going to be able to get those amends, they're not going to get the addict back the way they want, at least not for a long time. An analogy you can use is climbing a mountain. Most people who aren't professional mountaineers think the really hard part about climbing the mountain is getting to the top. And of course, that is a very hard part. What they tend to forget is that when you get to the summit, you're only halfway done. You still have to get all the way back down again. And it's the same way. When you get an addict into treatment, you're only halfway done. You still have to go through the descent. You have to go through the early recovery period. And the reality is most, or at least a lot, of mountaineering accidents happen on the way down. And that's because when you're on the way up, you have a lot of energy. You have a goal. You're trying to get to the summit. You're working hard. And then when you get to the top, you have a tendency to let your guard down. And you think, oh, this is going to be easy now. But in fact, the descent can also be very difficult. And it's the same with addiction. You finally get the addict into treatment, you're really only halfway there. It's you hate to say that to people, but that is the reality. Um, now, because of this, it's very good for family members to have some other form of support during this period because they're not going to get it from the family members. So it's good to have, can be a therapist, can be a support group, can be someone you know who understands what you're going through or at least can sympathize with what you're going through. But any kind of support you can have for yourself as a family member during this period, apart from the addict, is very, very helpful because it's going to take a long time before you really get that person back again. Now, the great danger in early recovery is, of course, relapse. Um, so, in our next session, we're going to talk a little bit about relapse, what it is, what causes it, how to prevent it, and what to do if it happens. So, hope you'll join me for that as well. That's very important. Thank you.